There's a specific kind of loneliness that begins before you even have words for it. It's the loneliness of a child standing in a room full of people, waiting for someone to look at them, really look at them, and see that they're there. It's not the loneliness of being physically abandoned, but something quieter, something that lives in the space between presence and absence. Picture this moment with me. A child comes home from school, bursting with something they need to share. Maybe it's excitement about a drawing they made, or fear about something that happened at recess, or just the simple ache of wanting to be asked how their day was. They walk into the kitchen, the living room, wherever the parent is, and they wait. But the parent doesn't look up, not because they're cruel, not because they don't love the child, but because they're somewhere else entirely, lost in their phone, trapped in their exhaustion, drowning in their own unhealed wounds. The child stands there, invisible, holding their heart in their hands with nowhere to place it, and so they learn something profound in that moment. They learn that what they feel doesn't quite matter enough to interrupt the silence. They learn that their inner world, rich and vast as it is, doesn't have a place in the outer world. They learn that to exist without being seen is to wonder if you exist at all. This is emotional neglect. It doesn't shout, it doesn't leave bruises you can photograph, it doesn't make headlines. It simply teaches a child, day after day, that they are not quite worth noticing. And that lesson, quiet as it is, becomes the foundation of everything they'll struggle with later. Because here's what people don't understand about emotional neglect. It's not just about what didn't happen, what wasn't given, what was absent. It's about what that absence does to a developing mind. When a child's emotions are consistently ignored, when their bids for connection go unanswered, when their feelings are treated as inconvenient or invisible, something happens deep in their psychology. They begin to disappear, not physically, but emotionally. They learn to quiet their needs, to minimize their feelings, to become small enough that maybe, just maybe, someone will finally see them without it being too much. They trade their authenticity for the hope of being noticed, and the tragedy is this: the smaller they make themselves, the less visible they become. The quieter their needs, the easier they are to overlook. Until one day they realize they've spent so long trying to be seen that they've forgotten how to see themselves. Psychologists call this the absent mirror. In healthy development, parents act as emotional mirrors for their children. When a baby smiles, the parent smiles back, reflecting that joy and validating its existence. When a toddler feels scared, the parent names that fear, holds it, shows the child that their emotion is real and manageable. But when that mirror is absent, when emotions go unreflected, something profound happens to a child's sense of self. They can't see themselves clearly because no one is reflecting them back. Their emotions exist in a vacuum, unwitnessed, unvalidated, and eventually they start to question if those emotions are even real. Think about what that means for a moment. Your entire inner world, every feeling, every need, every small joy and quiet pain exists but has nowhere to land. It's like speaking into a void and hearing nothing echo back. Over time, you start to wonder if you're speaking at all. This is why emotionally neglected children often grow into adults who struggle with a specific kind of emptiness. It's not depression exactly, though it can look like that. It's not anxiety, though that's often there too. It's the feeling of existing without quite believing in your own existence. They walk through life like ghosts in their own story. They achieve things, they smile, they function. But somewhere deep inside there's always this question: if no one really sees me, if no one truly knows what's happening in here, am I even real? Let me tell you what emotional neglect looks like in its everyday forms. Because it's not always obvious. It's not always a parent screaming or ignoring a crying child. Sometimes it's far more subtle than that. It's the parent who provides everything materially, a home, food, education, but who never asks what's happening in their child's heart. It's the parent who's physically present but emotionally absent, scrolling through their phone while their child tries to share something important. It's the parent who dismisses feelings with phrases like "get over it," or "you're too sensitive," or "stop being dramatic." It's the parent who turns every conversation back to themselves, who makes the child responsible for their emotional state, who treats the child's needs as burdens. It's the parent who never apologizes, never acknowledges hurt, never validates that yes, what you're feeling is real and it matters. It's the silence when there should be words, the distance when there should be warmth, the absence when there should be presence. And here's what makes this so insidious. The child doesn't have the language or the framework to understand what's missing. They just know something feels wrong. They look at other families and wonder why connection seems so easy for everyone else. They blame themselves, thinking, if I were better, more interesting, less needy, maybe then they'd see me. So they adapt. They become the good child who never complains, the independent one who doesn't ask for help, the responsible one who takes care of everyone else's emotions while quietly suffocating under the weight of their own. Psychologically, what's happening is profound. The child is learning that love is conditional on their invisibility, that acceptance requires self-erasure, that the price of belonging is the abandonment of their authentic self. Attachment theory teaches us that children need secure attachment to develop a healthy sense of self. That attachment comes from consistent emotional responsiveness, from knowing that when they reach out, someone will be there. But in emotional neglect, that reaching out meets air. The hand extends and finds nothing to hold. So the child learns what psychologists call avoidant attachment. They learn to not reach out. They convince themselves they don't need connection. They build walls so high that even they forget they're trapped inside them. It's not strength, though it might look like independence. It's survival. Because here's the truth about children. They're brilliant at adaptation. When love isn't available in the form they need, they'll reshape themselves to fit whatever form love does take. If love only comes when they're quiet, they'll become silent. If love only appears when they're achieving, they'll become perfectionists. If love seems to require their non-existence, they'll learn to disappear. But adaptation isn't thriving, and what saves you as a child will often cage you as an adult. Because those survival strategies, necessary as they were, become the very patterns that make genuine connection impossible later. Think about what happens to that emotionally neglected child as they grow. They enter adolescence already convinced that who they are isn't enough. Their peers are developing identities, experimenting with self-expression. But this child is still trying to figure out if they're allowed to have a self at all. They might become the chameleon, changing their personality to fit whoever they're with. They might become the observer, watching life from the sidelines because participation feels too vulnerable. Or they might become the overachiever, mistaking accomplishment for worthiness, thinking if I just do enough, be enough, maybe then I'll matter. But none of these adaptations address the core wound. None of them answer the fundamental question that lives in every neglected child's heart. Do I matter? Not for what I do, not for how I perform, but just for who I am. Do I have inherent worth? And when that question goes unanswered for years, when it echoes in the silence of emotional neglect, something profound happens to identity formation. Because identity isn't formed in isolation, it's formed in relationship. We come to know ourselves through the eyes of those who see us. We learn who we are by how we're treated. So what happens when we're not treated as if we're worth seeing? We internalize that message. We begin to believe that invisibility is our natural state, that being overlooked is what we deserve, that our needs are somehow less important than everyone else's. This is what psychologists mean when they talk about the internalized parent. That critical voice inside isn't just your voice, it's the voice of every dismissal, every unacknowledged feeling, every moment you reached out and found emptiness. It's the accumulated message of your entire childhood whispering you don't matter, and that voice becomes your constant companion. It tells you you're too much when you have needs. It tells you you're not enough when you try to be seen. It convinces you that the safest thing is to need nothing and expect nothing, to build a life so self-sufficient that you never have to risk that childhood disappointment again. But self-sufficiency, when it's born from neglect, isn't freedom. It's a prison. Because the truth is, every human being needs connection. Every soul craves to be seen, known, understood. That's not weakness. That's our fundamental wiring. Yet emotionally neglected children grow into adults who are terrified of that very need. They've learned that reaching out leads to pain. That vulnerability is dangerous. That showing their true self means risking the same rejection they experienced as children. So they hide, they perform, they build personas that are palatable and safe, and they wonder why nothing feels real anymore. Let me tell you about the search for a mirror, because this is where the story gets both heartbreaking and hopeful. Every emotionally neglected child becomes an adult desperately seeking what they never received. They're looking for someone to see them, to reflect them back, to validate that yes, you are real, your feelings matter, you exist. But here's the cruel irony. Because they never learned how to be seen, they don't know how to let people in. They want connection but fear it. They crave intimacy but sabotage it. They search for the mirror but run away when someone tries to hold one up. This plays out in relationships in predictable, painful patterns. They might choose partners who are emotionally unavailable, unconsciously recreating the neglect they know. Or they might push away anyone who gets too close, convinced that if someone really knew them, they'd leave anyway. They oscillate between desperate need and total withdrawal, never finding the balance that would allow genuine connection. In friendships, they often become the listener, the supporter, the one who holds space for everyone else but never asks for space themselves. They're so skilled at attending to others' emotions, a skill they learned in childhood trying to manage their parents' moods, that they forget they have emotions worth attending to. At work, they might excel, using achievement as proof of worth, but they struggle to accept recognition. Compliments feel hollow because they don't align with their internal sense of worthlessness. Success feels temporary, fraudulent, like any moment the world will discover they're not actually enough. Psychologically, what's happening is that they're still operating from their childhood programming. They're still the child standing in that room, waiting to be noticed. Except now they're standing in adult relationships, adult jobs, adult lives, and the wait continues. The mirror they're seeking is always external, always just out of reach. This is why emotionally neglected adults often report feeling empty, even when their lives look full from the outside. They have careers, relationships, responsibilities, but none of it touches the deep loneliness that lives inside them. Because that loneliness isn't about being alone, it's about having never been truly met. They can be in a room full of people and still feel unseen. They can be in a relationship and still feel unknown. They can achieve everything they set out to do and still wonder why it doesn't feel like enough. Because what they're seeking, what they've always been seeking, isn't external validation, it's internal recognition. But here's what makes this so difficult. When you've never been mirrored, you don't have an internal sense of self to return to. Your identity is fragmented, unstable, dependent on external feedback. You're constantly scanning others' faces for clues about who you are, how you're doing, whether you're acceptable. This is exhausting. It's why so many emotionally neglected adults struggle with chronic fatigue, with burnout, with the sense that life is something they have to constantly perform, rather than something they get to experience. They're living from the outside in, trying to construct a self from other people's perceptions, rather than living from the inside out. And this brings us to something crucial. The recognition that the mirror you're seeking, the one you've been searching for your entire life, cannot ultimately be found in another person. Not because people can't see you, some can, but because until you learn to see yourself, every external reflection will feel distorted, insufficient, temporary. The journey of healing from emotional neglect is the journey of becoming your own mirror, of learning to witness your own emotions, validate your own experiences, hold your own pain with the tenderness it deserved all along. It's learning to do for yourself what no one did for you. And I won't lie to you, this is hard. It goes against everything your nervous system learned in childhood. Your body remembers the danger of being seen, the pain of reaching out, the safety of staying small. So when you start to practice self-recognition, self-compassion, self-validation, every part of you might scream that it's wrong, that you don't deserve it, that you're being selfish. But that voice, loud as it is just the echo of your past. It's the internalized neglect trying to maintain its power. And you have a choice now that you didn't have as a child. You can choose to listen to a different voice. Let me tell you what building your own mirror looks like in practice. It starts with the smallest acts of self-attention. When you feel something, anything, you pause. You don't immediately dismiss it, minimize it, or push it away, you just notice it. You might say to yourself, I'm feeling sad right now, that's all. No judgment, no analysis, just acknowledgement. You're acting as your own witness. You're saying to that feeling, I see you, you exist, you matter. This might sound simple, but for someone who's never been emotionally validated, this is revolutionary. Because for the first time, you're not waiting for someone else to notice. You're noticing yourself. You're becoming the presence you always needed. As you practice this, you start to develop what psychologists call mentalization, the ability to understand your own mental states. You begin to recognize your patterns, your triggers, your needs. You start to see that your emotions aren't random or wrong. They're responses, information, guides to what you need. You might notice, for example, that you shut down in conflict because as a child, expressing upset was met with silence. Or that you overfunction in relationships because caretaking was the only way you learned to receive attention. These recognitions aren't about blame, they're about understanding. They're about connecting the dots between your past and your present. And slowly, something remarkable happens. You start to trust yourself. You start to believe that your emotions are valid even when no one else confirms them. You start to know who you are, not through others' eyes, but through your own gentle attention. This is the internal mirror. It's not narcissistic, it's not selfish, it's not self-absorbed. It's the healthy self-awareness that should have been built in childhood but can still be built now. It's the foundation that makes genuine connection possible. Because here's the paradox. The more you learn to see yourself, the less desperate you become for others to see you. The more you validate your own experience, the less devastated you are when others don't. You stop needing every relationship to fill the void because you're slowly filling it yourself. And from that place of increasing internal security, you become capable of the very thing you've always wanted. Real intimacy. Not the desperate, clinging kind born from emptiness, but the open, mutual kind born from wholeness. You can let people see you because you're no longer terrified of being invisible. You can receive love because you're learning to love yourself. But let's be honest about the grief that comes with this healing. Because as you build your internal mirror, as you learn to see yourself clearly, you're also seeing what was missing. You're feeling the full weight of what you didn't receive, and that hurts. You might grieve the childhood you didn't have, the parents who couldn't show up the way you needed, the years you spent believing you were the problem. You might feel anger at the injustice of it, at having to reparent yourself because the adults in your life couldn't. You might feel sadness for the child you were, standing in that room, waiting to be seen. All of that grief is valid. All of that anger is understandable. Healing isn't about bypassing those feelings with toxic positivity or pretending it wasn't that bad. It's about making space for the full truth of what you experienced and feeling the feelings you weren't allowed to feel then. This is where therapy can be invaluable, not because you're broken, but because you deserve to have a witness, a trained mirror who can reflect you back with accuracy and compassion. A good therapist becomes the attuned parent you never had, helping you learn emotional regulation, self-compassion, and secure attachment. But even outside of therapy, healing happens in moments of courageous self-honesty. It happens when you stop minimizing your experience by comparing it to others who had it worse. It happens when you stop waiting for your parents to suddenly become who you needed and accept who they actually are. It happens when you stop searching for permission to matter and give yourself that permission. There's a concept in psychology called earned secure attachment. It means that even if you started life with insecure attachment, even if you were neglected or abandoned, you can develop security later through conscious work, through relationships that repair, through learning to be for yourself what others weren't. This is the hope in this story. You're not doomed by your past. Your childhood shaped you, yes, but it doesn't have to define you. The patterns you learned can be unlearned. The beliefs you internalized can be challenged. The mirror you're seeking can be built, one moment of self-compassion at a time. And as you do this work, something beautiful begins to happen in your relationships. You stop attracting people who neglect you because you're no longer neglecting yourself. You start recognizing red flags earlier because you've learned what emotional presence actually feels like. You become capable of intimacy because you're no longer trying to get someone to save you from your own invisibility. You might find friends who can hold space for your emotions without fixing or dismissing them. Partners who are curious about your inner world rather than threatened by it. Communities where vulnerability is met with compassion rather than judgment. And when you do, it won't feel like everything, because you'll know that even if they disappear, you'll still have yourself. This is the shift from external validation to internal validation. From seeking the mirror to being the mirror. It doesn't mean you don't need others. Humans are relational beings, we're wired for connection. It means you stop needing others to confirm your existence because you've learned to confirm it yourself. Let me speak directly to you now. If you're someone who grew up emotionally neglected, if you recognize yourself in this story, I want you to know something. What happened to you wasn't your fault. You didn't fail at being worthy of attention. The adults in your life failed at providing what every child deserves. You were enough then. You're enough now. Your emotions, your needs, your inner world, they were always valid, always real, always worthy of being seen. The fact that no one witnessed them doesn't diminish their importance. It just means you were surrounded by people who couldn't show up for you the way you deserved. And I know there's a part of you that still waits, that still hopes that one day the people who neglected you will suddenly wake up, see what they missed, and apologize, that they'll finally become the mirror you needed. But I need to tell you gently, that might never happen. Not because you're not worth it, but because people who are emotionally unavailable often stay that way. They might not have the awareness, the tools, or the willingness to change, and if you keep waiting for them, you'll stay stuck in that childhood room, eternally hoping to be noticed. You deserve to walk out of that room. You deserve to stop waiting. This is where acceptance becomes powerful. Not acceptance that what happened was okay, it wasn't, but acceptance that it happened and you can't change it. Acceptance that you can't force someone to see you. Acceptance that the only person you have control over is yourself. And when you accept that, when you really let it sink in, there's a strange kind of freedom. You stop wasting energy trying to prove your worth to people who will never see it. You stop contorting yourself to fit into relationships that require your smallness. You stop living for external validation and start living for internal truth. You begin to build a life based on who you actually are, not who you think you need to be loved. You pursue interests because they genuinely matter to you, not because they'll impress anyone. You set boundaries because you respect yourself, not because you're trying to manipulate others into respecting you. You learn to say no without guilt and yes without resentment. You learn that your time, energy, and emotional capacity are valuable resources worth protecting. You learn that protecting yourself isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. And as you do this, you start to feel something you've rarely felt before. Solid, real, present in your own life. This is what it means to become your own mirror. It's not a one-time achievement, it's a daily practice. Some days you'll do it well, seeing yourself clearly with compassion. Other days you'll slip back into old patterns, criticizing yourself, minimizing your needs, seeking validation externally. But the difference is, now you'll notice, you'll catch yourself. You'll be able to say, I'm doing that thing again, and gently redirect yourself back to internal validation. This awareness, this ability to witness your own patterns, this is growth. This is healing. And over time, something shifts in your nervous system. The hypervigilance that made you constantly scan others for approval begins to ease. The anxiety that came from never knowing if you mattered begins to settle. The emptiness that felt like a permanent condition begins to fill with something solid, your own sense of self. You start to enjoy solitude, not because you're avoiding people, but because you genuinely enjoy your own company. You start to trust yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest. You start to feel at home in your own skin, not because all your wounds are healed, but because you're learning to hold them with tenderness. This is the gift on the other side of emotional neglect. Not that it happened, nothing makes that okay, but that you survived it and chose to heal from it. That you took the hand of your inner child and said, I'm here now, I see you, you're not alone anymore. There will always be moments when the old wound gets triggered. When someone's emotional unavailability will remind you of your parents. When being overlooked will bring back that childhood feeling of invisibility. When you'll doubt your own worthiness all over again. These moments don't mean you failed at healing, they just mean you're human. But what changes is how you respond to those moments. Instead of collapsing into them, instead of believing the old story, you'll have tools. You'll be able to pause, breathe, and remind yourself, this feeling is familiar, but it's not the full truth. I see myself even if this person doesn't. My worth isn't determined by their attention, and slowly those moments will have less power. They'll pass more quickly, they'll hurt less deeply. Not because you've become numb, but because you've become anchored in your own sense of self, in your own worth, in your own internal mirror that reflects you back accurately and kindly. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. It's choosing to spend time with people who make you feel seen, rather than people who make you feel small. It's recognizing when a relationship is one-sided and having the strength to step back. It's being able to say, I need support right now, without shame. It's celebrating your own accomplishments, even small ones, without waiting for someone else to notice. It's feeling sadness and allowing yourself to cry without judging yourself as weak. It's feeling joy and allowing yourself to express it without worrying you're too much. It's letting all of your emotions exist without needing someone else's permission. It's being able to sit with yourself in silence without needing distraction. It's journaling your thoughts and realizing you have a rich inner world worth exploring. It's making decisions based on what you want, not what you think others expect. It's living authentically, even when that authenticity makes some people uncomfortable. And it's recognizing that the people who truly love you will celebrate your authenticity, not punish it. That healthy relationships make space for your full humanity, not just the easy parts. That you deserve to be in connections where you don't have to perform, where you can just be. This is the life that becomes possible when you stop searching for the external mirror and build the internal one. It's not a perfect life. You'll still struggle, still hurt, still feel lonely sometimes, but it's a real life, an honest life. A life where you're finally present instead of constantly performing, and maybe that's the ultimate healing from emotional neglect. Not that you stop wanting to be seen, that's human, but that your existence no longer depends on being seen, that you know you're real whether anyone's watching or not, that you've become substantial to yourself. This is what I want for you. This is what you deserve, not because you've earned it through suffering, though you've certainly suffered enough, but simply because you exist. Your existence alone makes you worthy of care, attention, love. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to perform it. You just have to accept it. And I know that acceptance is the hardest part, because accepting that you deserve love means accepting that you deserved it all along, even when you didn't receive it. It means feeling the anger and grief of that deprivation. It means letting go of the fantasy that if you just tried harder, were better, needed less, they would have shown up. But they couldn't, and you can't change that. But what you can change is how you show up for yourself now. You can become the parent you needed, the friend you deserved, the mirror that reflects back your true worth. Not someday, not when you're fixed. Now, right now, in this moment, you can choose to see yourself. You can look at your reflection, not with the critical eyes of your internalized neglect, but with the gentle eyes of compassion. You can say to yourself, you're trying so hard, you're doing your best, you matter. And you can mean it. Not as affirmation you're forcing yourself to believe, but as truth you're finally allowing yourself to see. Because the child you were, the one standing in that room waiting to be noticed, they're still inside you, and they're still waiting. But they're not waiting for your parents anymore. They're not waiting for a partner or friend or therapist, they're waiting for you. They're waiting for you to turn toward them and say, I see you now, I'm here, you're not alone. And when you do that, when you become the mirror for your own inner child, something remarkable happens. The waiting ends, the searching stops. The desperate need for external validation begins to ease, not because you've stopped caring about connection, but because you've found the most important connection of all, the connection with yourself. This is the journey from emotional neglect to emotional wholeness, from invisibility to self-recognition. From searching for a mirror to becoming one. It's not a quick journey, it's not an easy one, but it's worth it. You're worth it. And one day, you'll look back at that child you were, standing in that room, waiting to be seen, and you'll realize something profound. They were never invisible. They were always there, always real, always worthy. The only thing that changed is that now, finally, someone sees them. You see them. And that seeing, that witnessing, that gentle acknowledgement, it's everything. So if you take nothing else from this, take this. You exist. Your emotions are real. Your needs are valid. Your inner world is rich and complex and worthy of attention. Not because someone else says so, but because it's the truth. It always has been. You just needed someone to confirm it. And now you can. You can be that someone for yourself. The search for a mirror ends the moment you realize you've been one all along. You've just been looking outward when the reflection you needed was always available within. Turn inward. Look closely. See yourself with kindness, and know that in that seeing, in that gentle witnessing of your own existence, you're finally giving yourself what you always deserved, to be seen, to be known, to matter, not to anyone else, to yourself. And that's where healing truly begins. You're not invisible anymore. You never were. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't see. But you can. You can see yourself clearly now. And in that clarity, you'll find something you've been searching for your entire life. Home. Not in a place, not in a person, but in yourself. Welcome home.